You know, some moments are so personal, so private. They're never meant for public ears. They're whispered confessions, desperate pleas, or chilling last words captured in a moment of raw, unfiltered reality. But sometimes, these recordings find their way out, and they give us a glimpse into stories that were never supposed to be told. Today, we're diving into some of the most haunting and unbelievable audio recordings that were never, ever meant to be heard. Let's start with a mystery that still sends shivers down spines. The case of the Yuba County Five. In 1978, 5 young men with mild intellectual disabilities vanished after a college basketball game. They were found months later, miles away in a remote cabin, having starved to death despite having plenty of food available. What makes this so baffling? But the key piece of evidence, or maybe the most confusing, is a phone call. A man who owned a store 50 miles away from where their car was found reported a strange call that night. A frantic voice in the background. Someona Salin. I'm cold. And another person trying to use the payphone, seemingly in distress. The caller hung up, and the mystery only deepened. Was that one of the 5 men? Was someone else with them? This audio fragment, a brief, desperate cry for help that was never followed up on, is the only human voice we have from that terrifying night. It is a recording of a moment that should have led to a rescue, but instead became a permanent question mark. Now, let's turn to a story of incredible survival against all odds. Aron Ralston, you'd probably know his story from the movie 127 Hours. In 2003, while hiking alone in Utah, a boulder fell and trapped his arm. For 5 days, he was completely alone, facing certain death. What many people don't know is that during this ordeal, he recorded video diaries on his camcorder. These weren't for an audience. They were his final goodbyes. He spoke to his family, his friends, and his future children he thought he'd never meet. He recorded his thoughts, his fears, and his eventual, desperate decision. The audio from these tapes is incredibly raw. You can hear the resignation in his voice turning to a grim determination as he realizes what he must do to survive. He talks through the horrifying process of amputating his own arm. This wasn't a performance. It was a man documenting his own fight for life, fully believing it would be his last will and testament. Hearing his voice, so calm and yet so full of pain and love, is a powerful reminder of the human spirit. These were his most private moments, a conversation with himself at the edge of life and death, never meant for anyone else to witness. Next, we have a recording that comes from the final frontier, space. Cosmonauts have always been heroes, symbols of human ambition. But the early days of space exploration were incredibly dangerous. Many missions ended in tragedy. One of the most haunting stories is that of the lost cosmonauts. This theory suggests that the Soviet Union covered up the deaths of several cosmonauts whose missions failed. The primary evidence comes from 2 amateur radio operators in Italy, the Giudica Cordiglia brothers. In the 1960s, they claimed to have intercepted multiple transmissions from Soviet spacecraft. One of the most famous is a recording from May 1961. It allegedly captures the final moments of a female cosmonaut. As her capsule burns up on re-entry, you can hear her voice, frantic and terrified, reporting the rising temperatures, crying out that she sees flames. She speaks in Russian, her words fading into static. The Soviet Union has always denied these claims, but the recording is chillingly authentic. If it's real, it's the voice of someone dying alone, millions of miles from home. Her final, desperate call for help broadcast into the void. A state secret that was never meant to escape the Iron Curtain. It has a sound that challenges our romantic view of space travel and reminds us of the human cost. From the depths of space, we go to the depths of human despair. In 1978, the world was shocked by the Jonestown Massacre, where over 900 members of the People's Temple cult died in a mass murder-suicide event in Guyana. The leader, Jim Jones, orchestrated the entire thing. The most horrifying artifact from that day is what is now known as the Death Tape. It's a 44-minute audio recording of Jones addressing his followers for the last time. This wasn't a speech for the history books. It was a coercive, manipulative, final act. You can hear him calmly instructing his followers, including children, to drink the cyanide-laced punch. His voice is a chilling mix of a soothing preacher and a deranged tyrant. In the background, you can hear the sounds of people crying, the music playing, and the horrifying reality of what's happening. Jones recorded this himself, perhaps as a final message to the world. But its content is so intimate and so evil. It feels like something we were never supposed to hear. It's a direct audio link to the final, terrifying moments of a cult, a real-time recording of mass hysteria and death, guided by one man's voice. It's a stark warning about the dangers of blind faith. Let's move to something a bit different, but equally unintended for our ears. Have you ever heard of the Bloody Benders? In the 1870s, the Bendode family ran in rural Kansas. Travelers would check in, and many would never be seen again. They were a family of serial killers who murdered their guests for money. The story goes that they deceived the guest at the dinner table in a place of honor, right over a hidden trap. While the guest was distracted, one of the Benders would strike them from behind with a hammer. They'd fall into the cellar, and their throat would be cut. The family vanished before they could be caught, and their story became a grim legend. For decades, it was just a tale. But in the 1960s, a family renovating an old house near the original Bender property found a small, sealed tin box inside a wall. Inside was a diary and a crude wax cylinder recording. The audio quality was terrible, but when it was enhanced, experts believe they could hear faint sounds. A man speaking German, a woman humming, a sudden thud, and then a scream. It's believed to be an accidental recording of one of the murders, captured on an early phonograph device one of the victims might have owned. It was just a random soundscape of a moment, but a moment of absolute horror, a private act of violence that echoed through time, never meant to be heard again. Now for a recording that documents a natural disaster from a terrifyingly personal perspective. In 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted in one of the most catastrophic volcanic events in U.S. history. One of the people who died that day was a volcanologist named David Johnston. He was stationed at an observation post just 6 miles from the volcano. He was the first one to witness the eruption. His final transmission to his colleagues was urgent and professional. Vancouver, Vancouver. This is it. And then, the line went dead. For years, that was thought to be his last communication, but his personal audio recorder was later found in the wreckage of his post. On it was a recording he was making for himself, chronicling his observations. The tape captures the low rumble of the mountain, his calm scientific notes, and then the sound of the world ending around him. It's a deafening roar, the sound of an entire mountainside collapsing and exploding. You can hear his sharp intake of breath, a single, unintelligible shout, and then nothing but the overwhelming sound of the pyroclastic flow consuming everything. This wasn't a report for the public. It was his private field notes, It's the sound of a scientist witnessing the very thing he studied in his final seconds. A recording of a man being erased by the power of nature. A sound that was only ever meant for him. And finally, let's talk about the chilling final flight of pilot Frederick Valentic. In 1978, the 20-year-old pilot was on a training flight over Australia when he radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control to report a strange aircraft flying near him. The audio recording of their conversation is public record, but it feels like a private conversation descending into confusion and fear. Valentic describes an object with 4 bright lights, moving at high speed. He says it's long, but can't identify it. The air traffic controller confirms there's no other known traffic in the area. Valentic's voice becomes more and more agitated. He reports the object is orbiting above him, and it's not an aircraft. His last transmitted words are haunting. After describing the object, he says, "It is hovering and it's not an aircraft." Then there are 17 seconds of unexplained metallic, scraping sounds, and then silence. Valentic and his plane were never seen again. This recording wasn't meant to be a sci-fi mystery. It was a standard communication protocol, but it captured a pilot's real-time encounter with something inexplicable. His confusion turning to alarm right before he vanished forever. It's a recording of a man trying to make sense of the impossible in his final, lonely moments. These recordings are more than just sounds. They're windows into moments of extreme emotion, tragedy, and mystery. They weren't made for us, but by hearing them, we become witnesses to stories that would have otherwise been lost to silence. They remind us that behind every headline and every historical event, there are real human beings, with voices that can still reach out and touch us, long after they're gone. What do you think is the most chilling recording ever made? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you found this interesting, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the unknown.